Marvel couple, director meets White Queen, episode 11. At the same time, Wolverine, who was standing on the side, had already pierced the bone slit with both claws and aimed at the neck of the White Queen. No one dares to threaten him in my face. The White Queen's eyes were full of killing intent, and the temperature around her was a little lower. Professor X was silent for a few seconds and said softly, "You've changed, Emma." The White Queen did not speak, but the blade suspended above Professor X's head sank another point. "Let's go." Professor X turned his wheelchair and dropped a few words. "Emma, stay away from him, that's all I can tell you. He's not a mutant, but he has mutant abilities, which is dangerous. If you need help from the X-Men, feel free to contact me. We will always be friends." The moment the blade disappeared, the steel claw retracted. Wolverine stared at the White Queen for a few seconds, before following in Professor X's footsteps. After the two left, the indifferent White Queen took out her mobile phone and dialed a number. "Send me the information of the underground emperor of Massa City. I want to know where he is now. Immediately." A few minutes later. The White Queen looked at the photos and addresses on her phone and changed into clean clothes. "Runaway, huh? I'm coming for you." The White Queen murmured softly, her eyes cold and terrifying. This is the original face of the White Queen. When mutant abilities first awaken, she slaughters an entire syndicate of human traffickers she occasionally encounters. At that time, countless corpses stood in front of her, and blood stained her whole body. And she, without the slightest mercy. The dragon has anti-scales, and those who touch it are angry. The phoenix also has a reverse feather, and whoever pulls it out shall set fire to his body. After changing into clean clothes, the White Queen left the villa. Although Feng did not tell the White Queen about the rampage and S.H.I.E.L.D. from beginning to end, it did not mean that she could not find out through her own means. This method is the White Queen's intelligence network. Before meeting Feng, the White Queen is expected to become a member of the X-Men. But she didn't like to be bound, so she simply left, and secretly subdued many mutant subordinates through the mutant information she obtained in the hands of the X-Men. These subordinates were all controlled by the White Queen telepathically. As long as she said a word, everyone would die for her. Therefore, after she easily found out through the intelligence system where the rampage mentioned in the X-Men's mouth was, she decided to solve the problem herself. Meanwhile, the largest nightclub in the city of Massa. Sitting on a soft sofa, he squinted at the nearly 23rd-tier female stars who twisted on the stage, and his eyes were still gloomy to the extreme. X-Men, damn X-Men. And S.H.I.E.L.D, all fucking damn it. This was the first time he had encountered such a grievance since he became the underground emperor of Massa City. He just wants to use some unclean means to trap the richest man in Massa City with a large amount of money. Why are they being targeted by the X-Men and S.H.I.E.L.D. at the same time? Why? What is the origin of that guy named Feng? Half an hour ago. His subordinates sent back all the news related to Feng. To sum it up in 4 words, it is bland. A waste second-rate director actually let the always invincible Violent walk away suffer a dumb loss. And for some reason, there is always a strong sense of crisis in the heart of the Violent walk. If in the past, when encountering such a difficult color, he would personally strike and directly wipe out the other party. But now, the sixth sense in his heart has always made him fear something. What to fear? What exactly is it forbidden? A second-rate director? Are you kidding? This makes it extremely difficult to run away. Perhaps, the angels and griffins can test it again. Storm drank all the XO in the cup, and finally couldn't help it. Just as he picked up his phone and was about to make a call, the music in the box suddenly stopped, and even the lights dimmed because of this. Immediately after, when he walked away, he raised his head and saw a scene that made him break out in a cold sweat. Those third-tier stars who were still dancing a second ago actually separated from their bodies in an instant, as if their heads were off the line. Dozens of blood flowed like pillars, staining the ceiling red in an instant. Who? Riot suddenly stood up from the sofa. He vaguely remembered that before he came, he arranged for a dozen killers to guard the door. "Don't look at it, it's all slaughtered by me." An indifferent female voice sounded in the ears of the Storm. The next second, countless diamond blades appeared around his body, sealing his body without leakage. There is no doubt that as long as he makes any movement, these blades will easily penetrate every bloodline of his blood. "Mutant, are you a mutant?" Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and because the light in the box was too dim, he only saw a tall black shadow faintly in front of him, but he couldn't see his face clearly. But as a mutant, he easily felt that this woman's ability was countless times stronger than himself, and he could even slaughter himself within one breath. He did not resist, because the White Queen simply did not give him room to resist. The moment the diamond blade emerged, telepathy locked the violent soul. This is the style of the White Queen. In front of Li Feng, she may be an iceberg beauty who can be easily pushed down. But in front of such evil people who stormed away, she was no different from killing gods. It seems that you just ran away? The White Queen sneered, and there was a strong disdain in her beautiful eyes. I thought you were so powerful, but I didn't expect you to be just a low-level mutant. What are your abilities? A thin skeleton? If only this level, you will not live more than 3 seconds in front of me. When he heard this, his face turned pale and gloomy. He didn't expect that there would be mutants who would dare to find trouble for themselves in Masa City. Who is he? The new underground emperor of the city of Masa. If it had been any other time, as long as he said a word, nearly hundreds of people with submachine guns would immediately block the entire nightclub entrance. But now, he doesn't seem to have that chance. Then try it. Violent Walk gritted his teeth, almost oozing these words from between his teeth. Pathetic. The White Queen sneered, raised her fingers that were as tender as mutton-fat white jade, and slid them out of thin air. Swish. All the diamond blades disappeared in an instant. The next second, the Violent Walker laughed viciously, and a layer of black armor instantly appeared on his body, shining with a dazzling black light. This is the Rampage mutant ability, an outer armor formed by a total of 206 bones of its own. When the White Queen saw this scene, her eyes were still cold and deaf. Episode 12, Stinky Bitch, Lao Tzu is going to tear you to pieces. Violent Walk released all his anger, like a vicious tiger preying, propped up his body, and slaughtered towards the White Queen. And yet, shout. An arm-thick diamond blade easily penetrated the chest of the Rampage. Poof. Violent Walk vomited a mouthful of blood, his eyes widened, his face was full of incredulity, and he slowly looked down at his chest. There is a hole of blood visible to the naked eye. The diamond blade has disappeared. It's only 2 seconds. The White Queen was expressionless, and her voice was like ice, and she came out of the shadows. Yes. It's you. Stormwalk clearly saw the face of the White Queen, and her whole face was terrified. In the next life, stay away from a person named Li Feng. The White Queen lightly raised a finger and aimed it at the violent head. Stop being so unsightly. Click. Countless diamond blades visible to the naked eye pierced the violent body without reservation. And the White Queen, without even looking at it again, slowly walked out of the nightclub. She had no interest in wasting her time, or even worried about the violent subordinates coming to her aid. Mutants of this level, she can do dozens of them with one hand. What is a Violent Walk? In the box, one person was invincible, and blood flowed like a river. The miserable new underground emperor of Masa City ran away violently, and did not even have a chance to beg for mercy, so he died at the hands of the White Queen. At the last second before he died, his eyes widened and his expression froze at the last moment. After a long time, 2 figures walked into the box. Griffins, angels. 2 mutants as powerful as the Rampage. The moment the storm came out, they received the news. But the White Queen's methods were too powerful and swift, and by the time they arrived, it was too late. After entering the door, the Griffin looked around, glanced at the corpse of the female star covered in blood, frowned slightly, kicked a corpse open in disgust, turned to the angel and said, "Hey, look for that guy's body, here." The angel stretched out his hand, lifted the rambling corpse, and looked it up and down. "It's disgusting." The Griffin sneered, pulled his phone out of his pocket, took a video of the body, and sent it to an anonymous mailbox. 2 minutes later, he received a phone call. "Hey, boss, I warned him not to be so ostentatious, but he didn't listen." After 2 seconds of silence, a hoarse echo came from the other end of the phone. "Transport the body back, block the news during this time, and stabilize the underground forces in Masa City. Also, that guy named Li Feng, don't move, the family of the richest man in Masa City, don't move either. If any of you dare to disobey my orders, I will peel his bones out of his flesh and blood little by little, understand?" The Griffin and the angel shivered at the same time. Yes. Meanwhile, after cooperating with the broker to register the company, Li Feng rushed to the next entertainment. A fan interview specifically started with the investors of Die Hard. As a new dark horse in the directing industry, Li Feng has gained a large number of young fans who love action movies through The Expendables 123. A large part of this depends on the outstanding performance of more than a dozen tough guys in the Death Squad and Li Feng's narrative technique. Even if Li Feng's international reputation is not high, in this place of Masa City, his fame can be said to surpass all local directors. After arriving at the destination, Li Feng walked into the recording area. This seems to be a venue dedicated to filming stage variety shows, and the guest seats are already full of reporters and fans who came to interview Li Feng. Li Feng is very enthusiastic about this. After all, it is difficult for the director of every movie to gain fans. To this end, he carefully answered everyone's questions and revealed a part of the shooting plan for Mission Impossible. The atmosphere of the entire interview site was very warm. But after the end, Li Feng suddenly received a call from his agent. "Boss, I have found a new agent assistant, because there are too many affairs in the new company, so your itinerary, I will let her assist throughout the process, you will see her soon." "Okay, I see." After hanging up the phone, Li Feng walked to the backstage of the recording area, looked up and saw a red-haired figure slowly walking in front of him, dressed in a compact OL group, and revealing a heart-pounding force on his body. "Mr. Li Feng, introduce yourself. My name is Natasha. I am your agent's new assistant, and I will be fully responsible for your itinerary and shooting plan, and if you need it, I can also be responsible for your life." The red-haired woman blinked her naturally charming beautiful eyes, and walked in front of Li Feng, by the way. Seeing that the two twin peaks that occupied the field of vision were approaching him, Li Feng only felt that his snort was a little hot. "This is your own broker assistant? Natasha Romanoff? Black Widow? Make no mistake, right?" Li Feng's heart was full of helplessness. Although Natasha is a complete stunner in the Marvel Universe, he has no interest at all. With the existence of such a caring wife as the White Queen, how could he be casually moved by other people? "Mr. Li Feng?" Natasha's voice sounded again. Li Feng came back to his senses, pretended to be calm, and nodded lightly. "I see." He didn't intend to directly say Natasha's identity, then S.H.I.E.L.D. would definitely find more ways to get close to him. For Li Feng's indifferent response, Natasha, who had always been walking in the pile of men, did not react at once. Temporarily receiving orders from S.H.I.E.L.D., she also specially picked an OL skirt that could highlight her figure the most to meet Li Feng. But why does this man look into his eyes without the slightest greed for desire? Could it be that Li Feng is a gay? Natasha was a little puzzled. What she didn't know was that the identity of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent had been completely exposed in front of Li Feng's eyes. New assistant to brokers? This kind of existence closest to the personal secretary has always been the favorite role of agents. It's just a pity that the current Li Feng is not interested in other women for the time being. There is still a wife in the family who is not yet satisfied. How can he be in the mood to take care of other women? This is also the reason why Li Feng does not intend to refuse Natasha to approach him. He was sure that Nick Fury would not let Natasha, an ordinary human, do anything to her as a mutant, but would let her soft seduce herself. "Mr. Li Feng, tomorrow you will have 2 drinking parties, both of which are the owners of the investors of Die Hard, and they have expressed their willingness to invest in your next movie." Natasha held a stack of documents in her hand, leaned in front of Li Feng and smiled. "If you have other arrangements, you need to tell me in advance, and I will negotiate with that side." Episode 13. Glancing at Natasha's looming scenery, Li Feng shook his head and said, "There is no arrangement. Tomorrow you tell me the address, I will go over myself. I still had a bit of a personal matter, so I left first. I can drive to pick up." Natasha still wanted to say something, but Li Feng didn't give her a chance to continue talking. She stomped her foot and looked down at her spectacular scenery with a look of anger. "Wait and see, Li Feng." After getting into the car, Li Feng glanced at the time on his watch. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At this point, the White Queen should still be in the hospital to take care of her mother. So, he didn't plan to go back. Rather, it is intended to go and meet the underground emperor of the city of Massa, called Runaway. Man does not offend me, I do not offend. A tooth for a tooth, blood for blood. This is Li Feng's code of conduct. It's unfortunate. Treating those who had threatened the life of the White Queen, Li Feng did not intend to stop there. As for the White Queen's slaughter in the nightclub, he didn't know about it at all. At present, he has only one purpose, which is to solve the trouble of violent running away and eliminate the future troubles forever. At this time, underground gang headquarters in the city of Massa. The Griffin and Angel gather all their men and inform them that they need to leave for a while, and they will take over all the affairs of the gang. Although the sudden news made many of his subordinates a little dissatisfied, after the Griffin directly used the power of mutants to tear up a few small minions in front of everyone quieted down. The most important thing for those in power is not connections, but means. After stabilizing the underground power, the Griffins and Angels took all the property in the underground vault for themselves. In fact, much of this property is the legacy of the previous underground emperor. Countless gold, countless cash. With such a huge fortune, you can imagine how profitable the underworld in this part of the city of Massa is. "Griffin, what are you going to do with this $10 billion? Looking at the empty headquarters, the angel lit a cigar and asked, greedily. Before meeting Runaway, both of them were professional killers who specialized in obtaining rewards by chasing mutants, so there was no reason not to be moved by this large pile of cash and gold. How to deal with it? Swallowed into our own stomachs, of course. The Griffin sneered, lit a cigar for himself, and scoffed, storming away that waste. He is not worthy to be the underground emperor of Masa City, and now that he has been slaughtered, your chance with me will not come. You mean? The angel's eyes lit up, licked his lips, and said, do that business we've always wanted to do? No, no, no. The Griffin shook his shoulders, and said a little maniacally, hey? That stuff is outdated, and we have to do something we don't dare to do. What's going on? The angel is a little confused. The richest man in the city of Masa. The Griffin narrowed his eyes, played with the cigar, and sneered, if you just let him go, won't you die in vain? What are you kidding? The angel grabbed him by the collar, and his face twitched. The boss said, if we dare to mess around, he will peel our bones out of flesh and blood. Afraid of what? The Griffin's face became crazy. The boss only said not to move the guy named Feng and the family of the richest man in Masa City, and didn't say that we wouldn't move the richest man in Masa City. Okay, what are you going to do? The angel also reacted and asked, blackmail? Or blackmail? Direct kidnapping. The Griffin sneered and said, but we don't have to come forward in person. I plan to spend money to find some wandering mutants and let them do this, but... The angel suddenly frowned. What if that person named Feng and the person who killed the riot are the same group? Then slaughter them together. The Griffin smirked, his eyes full of arrogance. Don't be so cautious, Angel. Remember how we used to slaughter mutants who were as wasteful as they were? Then get ready to act. The angel licked his lips greedily, obviously moved. I haven't slaughtered a mutant for a long time. It's been a long time. Boom. Just when the Griffins and angels were planning, a loud noise suddenly came, and this loud noise seemed to sound from the depths of their souls, making the two tremble. What's going on? What happened? The Griffin got up from the sofa with a ting. Because his sensitive nose felt the thick smell of blood in the air. Something happened. The angel also apparently sensed something that wasn't quite right. The two are mutants, and they have been killers for a while at the same time, and they are extremely sensitive to the smell of blood. Coming. Come on. Where are you going? The Griffin tried to call his men. However, no one responded. In the empty headquarters, only echoes remained. At this moment, an emaciated figure slowly walked into this huge headquarters. Surprisingly, with every step he took, cracks like spider webs appeared on the surrounding walls and on the floor under his feet. A huge, oppressive force permeated the surrounding air, causing the Griffins and angels to instantly enter a state of defense. Who are you? The Griffin cursed coldly. If you dare to take another step, I promise to tear you to pieces. Obviously, the Griffin came a little unsurely. However, this figure did not listen to his words, and even became heavy with each step. Boom. 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 Until this figure came completely 5 meters in front of the Griffin and the angel. The walls of the entire headquarters were already covered with cracks. Even the marble tables around them collapsed into pieces. Terrifying momentum. Fark, who the hell are you? Do you know whose territory this is? The Griffin fell into a rage, its eyes turned into golden balls like eagle falcons, and its fingers also turned into claws like griffins. When the animal is threatened, it will unconsciously spread its wings. But soon, he was stunned. Because he saw this figure clearly through the light. Covered in blood. Like a demon coming out of hell. There is no doubt that the one who came was Feng. The reason why he became this appearance was because before he entered the headquarters, he conveniently solved the more than 30 gangsters guarding the door. These more than 30 gangsters, in front of him, did not last for 2 seconds. It all depends on the Steppenwolf template's void guidance ability, which can easily pinch any human to death. It's just a pity that he is not so familiar with the application of the template, so he cannot control the direction of blood spraying. Hello, which of you called Runaway? Feng grinned at them and waved kindly. The angel and the Griffin glanced at each other, and a pair of silver wings suddenly arched behind their backs, and directly launched nearly hundreds of feather scale-like blades. Episode 14, Yikes! The feather thorn cut through the void, with a slight pungent smell of blood, shooting straight out. That's it? Feng pouted helplessly. He originally wanted to sit down and chat with S.H.I.E.L.D. and talk about life with these two brothers. But now, it seems unlikely. The moment the blade came to him, he raised his hand and waved it at the air. Brush! A strange black light flashed, and all the feather scales turned into nothingness. Suddenly, a huge axe, like a divine weapon, descended from the sky, fell straight down from the top of the head. Swish! An invisible hurricane tore off the walls all around, accompanied by the roar of an ancient wolf that caused cardiac arrest. Fack. What the hell is this? The griffin glanced at the looming giant axe, and his eyes were instantly burned with pain. Take all your strength and get rid of him quickly, or we will all die. The angel couldn't help but grit his teeth, and a flash of horror flashed in his eyes. He had never seen such a powerful mutant ability. Yes. In the eyes of the two, Feng was a powerful mutant. But actually, his ability is much more terrifying than that of mutants. I'm going to slaughter you, mongrel. The griffin roared suddenly, and the clothes on the upper body were instantly shattered, revealing strong muscles, and the back became curved. A humanoid goshawk. The angel on the side naturally did not fall into the wind, and when his wings were spread, there was a thin crack on his forehead, from which a dazzling light burst out, illuminating his whole body. Like a fallen angel. And yet, seeing this, Feng lightly raised his finger and pressed down. The next second, the angels and griffins who tried to take off seemed to have been hit hard in the back, and they fell straight to the ground, their entire vertebrae bent, and a mouthful of thick blood vomited out of their mouths. After less than 3 seconds, the two instantly lost their combat effectiveness. The translucent giant axe that was originally suspended in midair retreated into the void, and all the sense of oppression disappeared cleanly, and it calmed down. Feng patted the dust on his trouser leg, walked in front of the two, lowered his head and looked at them expressionlessly. He asked, is it a rampage? The griffin kept panting, and it took a long time to hold out a sentence, with blood in his mouth, and said intermittently, violent walk. Run away. He's dead, died yesterday. I was subjected to a mutants, slaughtered. Dead? Feng frowned. Runaway slaughtered? Slaughtered by whom? Peer? Or a hater? Or? A beautiful figure appeared in Feng's head. He shook his head, muttered impossible in a low voice, and said to the griffin and the angel, since he is dead, then you are here to take his place? Yes. Yes. The griffin endured the pain in his body and struggled. It's useless to leave you guys. Feng raised his hand, intending to never have future troubles, lest this group of unsightly things disturb his life again. Wait. Wait a minute. Can we talk about it? The angel's pupils shrank sharply, and his tone carried a fierce desire to survive. It was impossible to resist, and the two had completely lost their ability to fight. And such a humanoid monster, who can resist? But that doesn't mean they don't have a chance to survive. As beast-shaped mutants, their self-healing ability is very powerful. If this guy can talk to them properly, maybe he will have a chance to survive. Talk? What do you want to talk about? Buy me with money? Or buy me with women? Feng squatted in front of the two with great interest, with a playful face. In the face of the absolute strength gap, he is not afraid of what tricks these two guys play. As long as he wanted, he could crush the two into pieces in an instant. You are Mr. Feng, right? I've seen your photos. The griffin said in a trembling tone, Storm once sent his killer to kidnap you and your wife, but failed. I apologize to you here on behalf of Storm. We have nothing to do with that incident. It was a stupid decision made by Storm. He is dead, so there is a debt and a master. Can you let us go? I swear, as long as you let us go, we promise not to provoke you. Faced with the absolute terrifying deterrent, the griffin no longer has the previous attitude of not being afraid of Lao Tzu, but is like a thief caught by the police, trying to find a reason for himself to clear his guilt. And then what? Go on. Feng was still expressionless, but his heart was unmoved. He didn't actually intend to keep the lives of these two guys, let alone put them in his eyes. Cutting grass without removing roots, the spring breeze blows and grows, this truth Feng still understands. Moreover, after the death of Rampage, it must be these two mutants who take over the position of Underground Emperor of Masa City. At that time, what will happen when they slow down and come to themselves for revenge? The angel took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down, and then pleaded, Sir, I feel your strength, the two of us are nothing in front of you, even if you kill us, what can you get? You can only get a chaotic city of Masa, and without a new underground emperor on the throne, the gangsters here will be in chaos. Countless robberies. Crime the murderer. Even mutants will come to this place to spread wilderness. As long as you are willing to let us go, you will be our master in the future, and we promise that nothing similar will happen before. We can even help you slaughter everything that bothers you and your wife, do you think? Seeing that Feng was unmoved, the griffin quickly took over the conversation and said, Mr. Feng, we know that you are a big director, We can provide you with 100 million US dollars of shooting funds. These funds are the benefits obtained after storming to take over the position of Underground Emperor. We guarantee that it will hit your film and television company in the form of an anonymous account after you let us go. Obviously, both the Griffin and the Angel understood very well that if they wanted to live at this time, they were not pretending to be pitiful, and praying for Li Feng would let Li Feng let him go. Instead, it is necessary to come up with enough benefits, interests that make Li Feng's heart move, and a clear boundary. In this world, no one will resist wealth, let alone power. It turns out that the Griffin and the Angel are quite smart, and their choice is not wrong. Li Feng tried to think about the scene of doing these two guys, and found that what they said was not wrong. Masa City can be said to be the most rampant place in the entire American gangster, and if there is no powerful underground emperor to govern and make rules, then this place will definitely be a mess. Episode 15. When those underworld fanatics are not bound by rules, they will inevitably show their dirty fangs unscrupulously and gnaw at the flesh and blood of those innocent people. Although Li Feng was too lazy to care about the affairs of the underground gangsters in Masa City, he was not worried that there would be some murderer who did not have long eyes to find trouble. But this place, good villain, is where he lives. He didn't want to see a mess. If you accompany your wife to the mall in the future, and there is a gangster fight on the street, how annoying will it be? Therefore, Li Feng thought carefully and decided to let these two guys go for the time being. He stood up and said lightly, "You two successfully convinced me. But I want you to know, in my eyes, pinching you to death is no different from pinching two ants. If you dare to come to me again, I promise that no matter where you hide, I will find you out and cut off your flesh little by little. Feed the dog." When the words fell, the Angel and the Griffin fell into the ice cellar. They have heard countless words like this threat. But it was the only time they felt chills. After dropping these words, Li Feng raised his feet and turned to leave. The reason why he left a threat was not because he was afraid that these two guys would dare to come to the door to find trouble. If they really dared to do this, Li Feng would not hesitate to torture them to death through the Steppenwolf template. He just wanted to see if he could catch the big fish. Storm, Iceman, Angels, Griffins. With so many mutants appearing around him, it definitely can't just be a coincidence. After seeing this terrifying mutant born like a demon god leave, the tense bodies of Angels and Griffins finally relaxed. The two looked at each other, and both saw a touch of fear in each other's eyes. From this moment on, they made up their minds at the same time that they would definitely not provoke Li Feng, a second-rate director, again. Not only that, the Griffin even planned to wipe out all the gangsters near the area where Li Feng lived, lest someone with no long eyes offend this killing god. Only by clearing the boundaries in this way can he safely sit as the underground emperor of Masa City. So from another point of view, Li Feng's leaving Angels and Griffins behind is not necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, for a long time to come, he will no longer need to have friction with some low-level gangsters. After all, in the Marvel Universe, gangsters have always been experience weird. As for the plan that the Griffin and the Angel came up with just now, it was not fully born before it was completely obliterated by them in their minds. Are you kidding? With this level of killing god beside the richest daughter in Masa City, give them 100 dares, and they dare not kidnap Impatient to live? After lying on the ground for more than half an hour, the backbones of the Angel and Griffin gradually recovered a little. The two got up from the ground, cleaned up the blood stains on their bodies, and lay on the sofa with pale faces, gasping for breath. Do you want to tell the boss? The Angel's cheeks trembled and he asked in a low voice. Are you crazy? The Griffin glared at him angrily. You still think you're not hurt badly enough? If the boss knew that we messed things up, his anger would be even greater. That. How to explain the $100 million and those brethren? Explain? No need to explain, man. What we have is that $100 million can be earned back in less than half a year. Cold sweat broke out on the Griffin's forehead, his tone became a little weaker, and he muttered, the key is how to hide from this killing god next. Too powerful. Mutants of this level are too powerful. Rao is the boss who stands behind the Griffin, and he is not so terrifying. Griffins and Angels can also be regarded as the existence of killing dozens of Delta-level mutants, but in the face of Li Feng, they still have no power to fight back. If they weren't mutants, but the kind of ordinary gang boss, I'm afraid I won't last even a second. It took a long time for the Griffins and Angels to calm down. The two paced out of the headquarters, then gathered all the men who were still alive and announced a message. From now on, all the gang members in Masa City will not be able to provoke the killing god named Li Feng. Even more inaccurate, offensive. After returning to the villa, Li Feng glanced at his watch. Exactly, 6 o'clock sharp. The dusk overhead reflects the flowers of the manor, and everything looks peaceful and beautiful. Finished with the matter? A beautiful figure in pajamas, like a single branch in a flower bush, walked out of the living room, smiled slightly at Li Feng, and stepped forward and hugged his arm intimately. I met some difficult people, Li Feng rubbed her tender white forehead and said gently, you know, there are always people who want to get big directors to ask them to be the leading actor in some way, but they don't know how much courage and background it takes to do this business. Poof, the White Queen was rarely amused by Li Feng's words. Her expression did not carry any blame, but instead had a sense of satisfaction after waiting for her husband to return home. As for Li Feng's safety outside, she was not worried at all. After all, Li Feng still had the diamond watch she gave in his hand, and if there was any fatal trouble, she could know it as soon as possible. Then, the two walked into the living room and sat down at the dining table. Today I stewed black chicken soup for 3 hours, and a top-quality lobster that my father asked people to bring from Australia, and transported it chilled all the time. Try it? After speaking, the White Queen intimately served Li Feng a bowl of pasta and poured chicken soup with a strong fragrance. Li Feng tasted it without thinking about it, and sighed, the taste is really great. The White Queen smiled slightly, it seemed that only Li Feng's praise would make her happy. Honey, how is your father's business lately? Li Feng asked while drinking the soup, is there anything I need help with? Not really. The White Queen shook her head and said, you know, my father is a strong man, and he is responsible for all his work arrangements. Then let me ask you a question, if you have time, will you come to be the heroine in my movie? Li Feng suddenly changed his tone and asked with a smile, of course, there will definitely not be any passion drama with the male protagonist, I am very possessive. As long as it's you, I'm willing. The White Queen pursed her lips and replied, what are you going to make in the next movie? Gangster drama, how's it going? Li Feng mentioned it casually. The White Queen was stunned for a moment and asked, gangster drama? Is it the same as the Expendables? No, it's different. Li Feng shook his head and said, maybe. Some sci-fi elements will be added. Episode 16. Oh. The White Queen nodded understandingly and said, do you think my acting skills are good? Acting? Li Feng was obviously stunned. This was the first time that the White Queen had asked such a headless question. But when he looked at the expectant eyes of the White Queen, Li Feng still hesitated and said, also. Not bad. Then do you think that if I play the bad guy, will the audience like it? Playing the bad guy? Li Feng was stunned again, and did not answer immediately. He vaguely felt that today's White Queen seemed to be something wrong. Li Feng, if one day I hurt you, will you lose your temper with me? The White Queen suddenly raised her beautiful eyes and looked directly at Li Feng with those blue pupils. Li Feng was silent for 2 seconds, stood up and walked to the White Queen, took her into his arms, touched her hair, and said, fool, no matter what you do, I will not lose my temper with you, let alone resist you. Because from the day we got married, I swore that we would walk every step of life together. After speaking, he did not give the White Queen a chance to continue to ask questions, and directly blocked her with his lips. This intimate action made the White Queen's face blush suddenly. She tried to struggle, but to no avail. Li Feng stretched out his hands and hugged the White Queen's soft waist. You are my wife, my closest person, and always will be. No matter what you become, I will not lose you. As soon as the words fell, Li Feng directly picked up the White Queen and walked towards the bedroom. The White Empress knew that she couldn't refuse, so she quickly closed her eyes and left Li Feng at her disposal. Meanwhile, after handling all of Li Feng's schedules, Natasha finally pulled back the soul immersed in the new role. She walked into a sealed office, her eyes turned cold, and pulled out a small crystal panel and placed it on the table. Buzz! A burst of blue light flashed, and the picture of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters was projected. On the other side, there is the expressionless S.H.I.E.L.D. director, Nick Fury. How's it going? The other asked. According to the deployment, I have gained the trust of the target, but he is cold to me, unlike the targets I have encountered before. Natasha's tone of voice was cold and quick. The target he was referring to was Li Feng, whom he met today. A large part of the reason why he became Li Feng's agent assistant was to find out Li Feng's details, so as to achieve the purpose of approaching him and gaining trust. Before this task was issued, she had no idea who Li Feng really was. But when she personally heard the US team say Li Feng's horror, curiosity exploded instantly. I told you, Nick Fury responded, don't be too impatient, it's not a mess, and the purpose of my handing over to you is to gain trust, not to make him more defensive of you. I see what you mean. Natasha said softly, the information shows that Li Feng Jinwu has a wife and is the daughter of the richest man in Masa City. This woman seems to be Li Feng's weakness, if necessary, I will. No, don't do something so stupid, Natasha. Nick Fury warned seriously, in the investigation provided by Coulson, Emma spent some time with the X-Men, so there is a 90% chance that she is a mutant. Mutants? Natasha frowned and said, Li Feng's ability, will it be related to the X-Men? I'll take care of that. Nick Fury said lightly, without my order, you must not be tough on Li Feng. S.H.I.E.L.D has investigated all the information about him and his wife, which shows that Li Feng has a long gap between his appearance and his marriage. No one knows what happened. Li Feng may have another identity. This identity must be taken seriously. That's what brought me closer to him? Natasha muttered, if Li Feng is not interested in my beauty, you should send Agent Coulson to try it. How? Are you worried about ruining their couple's relationship? Nick Fury sneered and said, or do you think Li Feng is a gay? Natasha was stunned by this S.H.I.E.L.D boss when she heard her words, and she was suddenly a little helpless. The reason why she said this was because Li Feng's attitude towards her today made her very unhappy. When they usually perform espionage missions, those men are full of flaws when they are casually provoked by themselves. Only this guy named Li Feng, she couldn't see through. Okay, that's it for today. Nick Fury cut off the communication network. A trace of exhaustion flashed in Natasha's eyes, and she was thinking about what means to use when she saw Li Feng next. Seduce? Go to bed? Ambiguous? These. Does it really work? Maybe, you can try. Since dealing with the Griffin and the Angel, Li Feng basically didn't encounter any big trouble. In order to speed up filming, Li Feng devoted most of his time to the preparation of the new film and television company. During this period, Mission Impossible 123 was also successfully released to the world. In order to better make a name for himself, Li Feng filmed all three in one breath. This is familiar to him, who has seen the movie countless times. Therefore, the system also gives more rewards, the self-cultivation of actors in The King of Comedy, the chopping technique in The Man of the Confused Boy. 100% standard curse quotes in Carmen in Mong Kok. The Avadaso curse in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. These rewards were not useless for Li Feng, at least the last Avadaso fate spell was a very useful self-defense technique. But the most critical problem is that Li Feng can't use it at all. As soon as the riot in Masa City died, and as soon as the Griffins and Angels took the throne, no one dared to fight his idea. What the? You say it's okay to use it to pretend to be useful? Big brother, that's the Avadaso curse. To whom to use is not a death. However, it is worth mentioning that during Li Feng's busy filming time, the plots of The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 1 and Deadpool have basically happened and are in rapid progress. The Hulk, who escaped from the laboratory, disappeared into the city incognito with the help of the military after experiencing a battle with the mutant abomination. The famous playboy Tony Stark has also escaped from terrorists and began to use Stark Industries funds to research steel armor, during which a press conference was held to announce his identity as in the original plot. Episode 17. This caused a big stir all over the world. After all, Tony's non-low-key personality is different from all superheroes. This is also the core reason why he became the Avengers. He is a haughty and conceited man, but also a man who is not willing to remain anonymous. This personality is very similar to Li Feng, so the only person in the Avengers who allows him to appreciate his real identity is Tony Stark. At least this guy always rushes to the front, regardless of the hardships and dangers, right? By the way, taking advantage of the opportunity to establish Marvel Studios Company, Limited before, Li Feng directly invested the $100 million sent by Griffin and did a lot of publicity, which attracted the attention of many investment companies. It is estimated that it will not be long before Li Feng launches the 456 movies of Mission Impossible together, and the company can be officially listed. At that time, Li Feng will have a bolder idea. Ask Tony Stark to make a documentary about the Battle of New York. At that time, his worth will soar exponentially. Every year, just the dividends at the theater box office are enough for Li Feng to live a worry-free life, and he doesn't need to worry about money at all. This news Li Feng naturally shared with the White Queen, but the latter did not feel much about it at all. If Li Feng also had a father who was the richest man, he would be the same. Do you have time to go shopping with me today? At the dining table, the White Empress wore a looming dressing gown, poured a cup of hot milk for Li Feng, and asked softly. Today? Li Feng shook his head helplessly and said, I'm afraid not today. Why? The White Queen's brows frowned slightly, and there was more arrogant dissatisfaction on her face. 2 days ago, the agent told me that several investors in my film and television company are interested. Li Feng said apologetically, My dear, I have to meet with these investors and then talk, so that my film and television company can go public faster, and then there will be more money to support you. Who wants you to raise? The White Queen glared at him and pretended to ask casually, What are the investors? Is it local to the city of Masa? Most of them. Li Feng didn't have anything to hide. After all, there really was this matter. There is another. Stark Pan Entertainment Investment Company, Stark? The White Queen paused slightly and asked, it's the one on TV. The Rich Boys Company? Yes. Li Feng nodded and explained, there are many spy weapons in Mission Impossible, and Stark Industries is also an expert in this area, so they are very interested in the movie I will make next, and just went over to talk to them. Will you meet the guy named Tony Stark? The White Queen asked. This? I don't know. Li Feng shrugged his shoulders, probably not, after all, people are very busy. Or do you want your wife to come with me? The White Queen hesitated, shook her head and refused, and said, you know, I don't like places with many people, I just want to stay with you. Okay. Li Feng drank the hot milk in the cup and instructed, then I'll go over by myself first, and pay attention to safety when you go to the hospital to visit your mother. Go out with your bodyguards, if there is any emergency, call me, I will be the first to arrive. Since getting married, the White Empress has basically lived in two places, either taking care of her biological mother in the hospital or waiting for Li Feng to return at home. Except for the occasional outing with him, there is basically no extra entertainment. This kind of pure heart and lustful days, the White Queen seems to cherish very much. You don't need to care, huh? The White Queen snorted softly, turned and walked into the kitchen, packing her things. Li Feng was also accustomed to the arrogance of his little wife, smiled helplessly, put on his suit and turned to go out. After Li Feng left, the White Queen walked barefoot to the bedroom window, looked at the scenery in the manor, glanced back, and said lightly, come out, aren't you tired of staying like this? Which, when the words fell, in front of the wardrobe in the bedroom, there was a slight flash of blue light, and then a figure with purple hair and dark blue embellishments slowly emerged from the air. Long time no see, Emma. The witch walked up to the White Queen and greeted her. Magneto escaped? The White Queen glanced at her lightly and asked. Yes, you are still as smart as ever. The witch shrugged her shoulders. She asked you to come to me? The White Queen asked again. So to speak, the witch leaned over the windowsill and said, we need your abilities to confront Professor X. Oh? The White Queen sneered. As a former member of the X-Men, the White Queen and Magneto are also old acquaintances, and they have had a period of experience fighting side by side. The witch has always followed Magneto, and her appearance also represents that Magneto has returned to the human world again, which makes the White Queen have to pay attention. The reason why she quit from the X-Men was because she hated the world in her heart, so she chose to join forces with Magneto. Because in some cases, she is the only one who can control or influence Professor X's psychic mind telepathically. With Magneto captured, she also escaped. After that, she met Li Feng and lived a normal life. Remembering Magneto, a guy who only wanted to destroy the human world, the good mood of the White Queen in the morning disappeared. She likes her current life very much, and she likes the carefree with Li Feng. Every day, you only need to wait for Li Feng to come home, and then roll the sheets with him, without worrying about anything, let alone killing people with your mutant ability anytime and anywhere. Such a life was never imagined by the White Queen. She cherishes it. Even in the eyes of the White Queen, the so-called destruction of the world is not comparable to the happy days with Li Feng. At that time, she had just entered the X-Men, rebellious and arrogant, and in the face of Magneto's temptation, she joined without the slightest hesitation. But now, she clearly knows what she wants. Let's get down to business. Seeing that the White Queen did not take the initiative to speak, the witch said, Magneto is recruiting some new followers. We found an ancient relic in Egypt. There is a mutant who has lived for nearly 1,000 years, according to ancient records. That guy already existed in the first dynasty of ancient Egypt. We plan. Resurrect him, a mutant who has lived for 1,000 years? The White Queen's beautiful eyes shrank slightly and asked, you? And what big deal do you want to make? I don't know more. The witch shrugged her shoulders and said, but you should be interested in another thing. Your old rival, the Dark Phoenix, has also been rescued from the darkness. Episode 18, Jean Grey? The White Queen frowned, biting her tender lips lightly, and said, she also followed Magneto? Yes. The witch's face was more excited, and she said, have you seen her power? It was so powerful, simply too powerful, that Wolverine didn't even have room to fight back in front of her. The White Queen took a deep breath and said, I won't go back. You tell Magneto, if he wants to come and destroy my life, I promise to make him pay 100%. He knew you would say that. The witch covered her mouth and chuckled, so he decided to pull your husband into the gang. The voice just fell, swish. Countless diamond blades levitated around the witch. But the latter's body barely had any retention, directly merged with the air, and disappeared. The White Queen gritted her teeth, and there was more killing intent on her face. But soon, it softened again. If Magneto really dared to make a move against Li Feng, she would not hesitate to release the demon in her heart. That god who coexists with her. Meanwhile, the land of Egypt, thousands of kilometers away from the United States. Beyond an ancient pyramid, wearing a helmet, Magneto and two of his men marched slowly through the desert. According to ancient records, the shockwave woman raised her slender finger and pointed to the top of the pyramid that was flooded by yellow sand not far away. That guy is sealed inside this pyramid. Magneto raised his head, glanced at the camp stationed outside the pyramid, and calmly asked, "What are these people doing?" The nocturnal girl standing beside him flickered back and forth a few times, and after lifting up a patch of yellow sand, she said, "It should be the archaeological team that came here to investigate the surrounding government. If they're here, we can't get in." Magneto paused in his footsteps, then raised his hand expressionlessly, aimed at the figures surrounding the pyramid, and gently squeezed. Bang! An invisible magnetic force suddenly erupted. The lives of dozens of innocent people exploded and died in an instant. "Now, I can go in." Magneto sneered and quickened his pace. Behind him, the shockwave girl and the night walker looked at each other, and they both saw a touch of fear in each other's eyes. Northern part of the United States, a certain state. "Let me in, this hammer is my thing." Thor, dressed in casual clothes, explained to the S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel in front of him while constantly looking inside the cordon. "Did you have your name written on it? You say it's your stuff." The S.H.I.E.L.D. worker sneered and mercilessly blocked him out. "If you don't believe me, let me." Before Thor could say anything, a black pistol pressed against his head. "Get away from me." Okay. Thor was full of frustration and had to turn away. For an Asgard prince, losing his divine power is equivalent to losing everything. If he can't awaken Mjolnir again, I'm afraid he won't be able to return to Asgard in this life. What to do? Thor just cursed into the air, and suddenly there was an additional figure in front of him, with a little mocking words. "Look, the way you look now, it's really down. Are you Loki?" Thor recognized it in an instant. This guy in a suit was his own damn brother. "God of mischief, Loki. Why did you come to Earth too?" Thor rushed straight up and grabbed him by the collar and yelled, "Let Heimdall send me back, quick. Right now. Right away, don't mess around, my dear brother." Loki held his hand and said with a smile, "How? Don't you like the environment here? The world is not known how many times better than Asgard." "Shut up." Thor gritted his teeth and said, "Can't you hear my orders?" "Oh, don't be like that, I really hate it when you talk to me this way." Loki's face gradually became indifferent, and he pushed Thor away and said, "You are no longer qualified to talk to me. I am the only heir of Asgard, and you are just an ordinary person who has been relegated to the Nether." Thor took a deep breath and suppressed his temper. In terms of force, now he is not Loki's opponent at all. If he really fights here, he will only lose a mess. "Stop talking nonsense." Loki sneered, "My dear brother, I came here to tell you that you can't go back. I'm about to sit on the throne of Asgard, and you must stay here forever." "You? What do you mean?" Thor heard the killing intent in his words, and his whole body tensed. The next second, Loki suddenly grabbed his side, and a dark green scepter appeared in the palm of his hand. He closed his eyes tightly and whispered the incantation. "Destroyer, show up. As the noble prince of Asgard, I order you to slaughter Thor." The last word fell. Bang! A huge steel monster fell from the sky. The destroyer in Thor 1 has officially arrived on Earth. "Enjoy yourself, Thor." Loki laughed loudly and disappeared in an instant. This time, it's over. Looking at this immortal palace metal monster that Asgard called the ultimate weapon, Thor did not hesitate at all, turned around and ran. Asgard, the divine court. Loki stood in the middle of the main hall, raised the scepter in his hand, and waved it lightly against the ceiling made of fairy stone. Suddenly, a picture of Odin's conquest of the 9 realms in ancient times appeared in front of him. In the painting, there is a beautiful figure like the goddess of death, breaking the halberd and sinking into the sand, heroic as a martial god. "My dear sister, where are you hiding on Earth? If you let your father know that you have run out of the cage, he will be very angry, right?" He muttered, but sneered, "Such a good chance for revenge, I don't believe you can bear it. Slaughter Thor and you'll be back in Asgard, won't you? Come on, I can't wait." "You slaughtered Thor, I slaughtered you, isn't the throne mine?" As Mjolnir enters the Nether, the plot of Thor 1 is also rapidly progressing. It's just that what Feng didn't expect was that while these plots were progressing, some changes that should not have belonged to the original plot were quietly underway. At this time, he was driving his Maserati, crossing the long highway to the first floor of the Stark Tower in the center of New York. Episode 19. Meanwhile. School of Mutants. What? Professor X's face suddenly sank. You said, the Violet Walk was killed. Yes, Professor. The beast reluctantly took off his glasses and said, I went to Masa City with Laser Eye to inquire, and it was indeed slaughtered. Did you find out who it was? Professor X's tone became a little cold. Every time a mutant dies, some induction appears in his brain. But the violent death made him appear without warning. This means that either the people who are slaughtered are not mutants at all. Or, this mutant is overly powerful. Even let his spiritual mind not feel its existence at all. There's one more troublesome thing, Professor. Laser Eye said in a serious tone. After Storm died, 2 new mutants came to take over his place. It was Griffin and Angel. These 2 were also members of that gang just like Stormwalk, but I heard some grapevine information that it was said that less than 3 hours after they took over, they were crippled, and together with more than 30 gangsters, they were wiped out. So our guess is that the 2 should be the same person. When Professor X heard this, he fell silent. First killed a rampage, and then beat the Griffin and the Angel into a cripple? Except for an alpha-level mutant like him, he couldn't think of anyone who could do this. Emma, is that you? Professor X lowered his head and muttered to himself. The only mutant who has a festival with the rampage and is as powerful as him and stays in the city of Masa is the White Queen. Still say. A figure suddenly appeared in Professor X's head. Are you? Laser Eye and Beast looked at each other, not understanding what Professor X was muttering. After a long time, Professor X took a deep breath and said, let's go to Masa City and meet someone. Who? Feng. After the vehicle stopped, Feng walked into the first floor with the invitation sent by Stark. Since the joint premiere of 123 parts of Mission Impossible, Feng's fame can be said to have resounded throughout the United States overnight. After all, in the Marvel Universe, movies like this spy agent are very popular. But what surprised Feng was that even Stark Industries branch was interested in becoming his own investor. This is actually not surprising in the eyes of the public. After all, a heavy industry group that claims to be the largest in the United States, there will definitely be some companies investing in other industries. Eggs can't always be in one basket, can they? But in Feng's eyes, there is something intriguing. Tony Stark's relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D. is definitely the second only to Team America in the entire Marvel Universe. Admittedly, Stark Group's investment in its own film company is definitely a good thing. After all, people are not short of money. But what if S.H.I.E.L.D. deliberately made Tony do this? Feng straightened out his thinking and decided not to think about it for the time being. Feng is accustomed to this kind of meeting with investors. Except for some celebrities who are involved, there are few serious business talkers. In other words, participating in this kind of meeting is nothing more than talking, drinking a few glasses of red wine together, and if the investor sees it, the follow-up matters are handed over to the broker and the company to discuss. Fortunately, Feng is now a successful person, not to mention that he has entered the circle of celebrities. At least he has also entered the ranks of first-line directors, so here, his right to speak is not small. As soon as I walked in the door, a sound of discussion came into my ears. Hey, did you hear? Lately, there are a lot of mutants making trouble in the city. It's really ghostly. I sent my daughter abroad. I'm really afraid that they will bring us harm. I'm more worried about waking up and these mutants are like crazy and ruling the world. Oh, William, that's impossible. Don't forget that we still have the government. I hope they don't eat dry food. Hearing this, Feng smiled and did not pay attention to it at all. Whether it is mutants or Avengers, they are all part of the composition of the Marvel Universe. Their existence is indeed a threat to some ordinary people. But everything has a value in existence. Without them, how could these ordinary people live in peace? Just as Feng was about to go to the VIP area to meet those investors, 2 familiar figures suddenly appeared in front of him. I saw a guy wearing black sunglasses and a blue-skinned man with long hair on his body, pushing a middle-aged man in a wheelchair slowly forward in the hall on the first floor. Laser Eye, Beast, Professor X. The appearance of these 3 people instantly made the field boil. These 3 guys, are they mutants? That guy with blue skin all over his body, I remember appearing on the news. It's a gang called the X-Men. Is this a good mutant or a bad mutant? Whether it's a good person or a bad person, as long as it's a mutant, it makes me feel disgusted. Stay away from them. Hearing these noisy sounds, Professor X did not pay attention to it at all, but just looked around expressionlessly, as if looking for something. But in the laser eye behind him, he doesn't think so. If the law allows, I will not hesitate to take off my glasses and bake these guys to ashes. Laser Eye lowered his voice, a coldness flashed in his eyes, and complained to the beast beside him. With the frequent awakening of mutants, the entire United States has a great dislike for this group, and seems to treat them as rats living in sewers. That's normal. After all, the Battle of New York has not yet happened, and mutants are arguably the most feared existence in the world today. This is true in every society where the law of the jungle preys on the jungle. Whoever has great power will be collectively isolated and resisted. Calm down, Laser. This is S.H.I.E.L.D. territory, and if you do, I guarantee you won't be able to walk out of this building. The beast pushed his glasses, and the composure and calmness on his face were incompatible with his appearance. Without waiting for the Laser Eye to reply, he lowered his head, looked at Professor X, and said, "Did you find that person?" "Professor, he's coming towards me." Professor X grinned at the corners of his mouth, smiled slightly at Feng, who was standing in front of him, and nodded. "Mr. Feng, it's nice to meet you. My name is Charles. I really like your Mission Impossible 123, the starring role in it is really unforgettable. I heard that Mr. Feng recently established a new company, and he plans to shoot some blockbusters with sci-fi elements in the next time, and I am very interested in this. Episode 20, you should know that I'm a mutant, and I think I can give you some help. Interested in talking? Smart people don't like to talk nonsense." So Professor X, omitting most of the opening remarks, stretched out his thin right hand. Looking at this middle-aged man with a kind face and wisdom in his eyes, Feng was unmoved. He didn't know why Professor X was here, let alone that Professor X had become curious about his identity. Compared to S.H.I.E.L.D., the mutant group should be more cautious. After all, the person standing in front of him was an alpha-level mutant. "Mr. Feng, maybe we can change to a convenient place to speak." Seeing that Feng did not respond, Professor X withdrew his hand and smiled calmly. "Just say it here, I'm short on time." Feng hugged his chest with both hands, leaned against the wall on the side, and tasted the red wine lightly. "Okay." Professor X sorted out his thoughts and said softly, "Mr. Feng, your wife Emma and I are old acquaintances." Feng's elbow fell. "The reason why I revealed this is to tell you that I already know some general things about the underground gangsters in Masa City." Professor X observed Feng's change and deliberately deceived, "You did it, right?" Feng's face gradually became cold, he didn't know why Professor X suddenly said this. Just as he placed his wine glass on the table, Professor X's eyes suddenly froze. So. A violent and piercing spiritual thought, like a cocoon, gushed out from the depths of Professor X's brain, turned into an invisible needle peak, and wrapped towards Feng's brain. The next second, Feng's face changed drastically, and his forehead was bruised. But this change only appeared for a second, and he regained his composure. But Professor X in front of him is not so comfortable. His entire face turned extremely pale, and his heart seemed to be eaten back, and a sharp pain was transmitted. The spiritual invasion was actually bounced back. Professor X's heart shook suddenly. At this moment, he suddenly felt that it was dark in front of him. Immediately afterwards, a giant black shadow standing in the void, nearly 8 feet tall, appeared out of thin air, opened purple-red eyes like wolf pupils, swung the giant axe in his hand, and slashed down at him. S.H.I.E.L.D. Professor X woke up suddenly and gasped. "Professor, what's wrong with you?" The beast sensed something was wrong and bent over and asked. Professor X did not pay attention to him, but looked at Feng with a terrifying and incredulous look. Just now, he tried to use his spiritual power to forcibly invade Feng's mind and read his memory. But instead of succeeding, he was expelled by an even more terrifying force. He could clearly feel that this force did not belong to this world. Moreover, it does not belong to mutants. Thinking invasion of this kind of thing, Professor X usually does not do less, basically can be 100% successful. Even if the other party notices after the end, there is nothing they can do with him. But Feng, it's too strange. This made him feel a sense of horror that he had never felt before. Feng, who understood the reason for the matter, also reacted at this time. His face was cold, his eyes were full of anger staring at Professor X, and he asked, "This is the purpose of you coming to me?" After saying this, a little cold sweat oozed from his back. Because the memories contained in Feng's brain are not only the secrets of the Marvel Universe and system crossing. These secrets are top secrets that cannot be known by others. But just now, Professor X actually tried to invade his mind. Since coming into this world, no one has dared to do this to him. Without the existence of the Steppenwolf template, Feng's secret would be fully revealed in front of Professor X's eyes. At that time, he only has one option: slaughter this old guy in public. Now, he wanted to see what Professor X explained. "Sorry, Mr. Feng." Professor X didn't mean to quibble at all, and apparently he was aware of the trouble with the matter. But he still didn't recover from the horror just now. "Feng, how did you do it?" Could it be that he is an Omega-level mutant who is more powerful than himself? Professor X couldn't figure it out and didn't have the energy to think about it. Because he had clearly felt that there was a heart-shaking killing intent in the air. Sorry, I'm really sorry, Mr. Li Feng, this is not my intention. I think I should tell you that one of my mutant abilities is telepathy. Sometimes. It will go unchecked, you know what I mean? I swear by my personality, I must not have meant it. Professor X made a bitter face and apologized to Li Feng. Oh? Is it? Li Feng took a step forward and approached Professor X. The laser iron beast in front of him instantly stood up and blocked in front of the ladder. Don't mess around, I warn you. The beast stared at Li Feng's eyes and said defensively. Li Feng sneered, looked at Professor X condescendingly, leaned into his ear, and whispered word by word, Charles, I know you, I know what you want to do, and I also know who is around you. I tell you, no one has ever dared to offend me so much, you are the first, and I promise you will pay accordingly. But you can rejoice for a while, at least not now. After speaking, Li Feng straightened his back, straightened his collar, turned around and walked into the VIP room. There was not the slightest mercy in the tone. In other words, what would have happened if Li Feng had not detected Professor X's spiritual power? So, there is no room for mercy. If it weren't for the large number of people here, Li Feng would definitely use his own means to let Professor X feel what is called real terror. Previously, Steppenwolf appeared in the other party's mental thinking, which was completely the result of passive defense. The Marvel Universe is already full of unknown dangers, and most superheroes have their own selfish intentions, and it can even be said that there are no absolutely good people at all. If Li Feng is just an ordinary director, without a system and without any special abilities, how should he face these vicious methods? The reason why mutants are resisted and avoided by most humans is not the human pot, but their own problems. With the superpowers brought by the X gene, it is normal to think that you are above ordinary humans, and then do something self-righteous. Whether it is the people of the X-Men police or the people on Magneto's side, they are doing such evil.